Go.
They could have 3 losses by now.
I don't know about that.
They are not that good.
Put Florida State in there, I would say yes to that, what you just said.
On return by Caleb Downs. And he finds a seam. He makes the punter look silly. Caleb Downs, show him what you got. Touchdown, Bama.
I'm going to drive now for UTEP. And they will keep it on the ground. Awad just gets pile-driven by Stutzman.
Really haven't even tried from the shotgun.
That throw's intercepted. Pierce down the sideline. Touchdown.
Claiborne, the sophomore, has 1 score so far this season. Rivers will buy a little bit of time. Falling down, lost the football. Play is still live. And recovered by the Monarchs. Lamarian James will take it the other way for the ODU touchdown.
Welcome back to Devy IDP Grind. I'm at Hollywood Titan. Justice will be joining us here in just a minute. We've got a special show for you tonight. We're going to talk some Tennessee Vols defense, and we have a special guest with us. If you're a big Vols fan or a fan of mine, then you know all about him. It's John Dunn of the All Vols Call-In Show. What's going on, John?
What's up, man? Good to be here with you, man. I'm doing all right. How you doing this afternoon?
Doing pretty good, pretty good. You're a member of the National Collegiate Baseball's Writer Association, a proud father. I see all your pictures that you post of your kids. Great looking group you got there. You're a founder and the host of the All Vols Call-In Show. That's got to be a great accomplishment of itself right there.
Yeah, it is, man. Along with my work with Lincoln Memorial University, where I'm the athletic media relations director, those are busy. You know, aside from being a father, I work, in collegiate athletics full time. That's how I make my money, how I pay my bills. So, I'm a blessed man, both, in and out of my professional life. And honestly, man, I just gonna keep going, gonna keep doing it till I can't no more.
I love it, man. Been a huge fan of your work and all that you've been doing for a long time. I'll try to follow all your stuff at LMU too. So keep up the good work, man. Thank you for joining us. We wanted to talk some Tennessee Vols defense. A lot of questions surrounding that. We'll just get right into it. I'll jump back to the one here. For those that's not familiar with the Volunteers defense, how would you describe their defensive style scheme?
Honestly, I would call it tenacious up front, bend but don't break in the secondary. I feel like it's kind of been that way, especially with Rodney Garner coming back to Tennessee. I think anytime you have Rodney Garner coaching a defense, whether he's been at, Georgia, Auburn, where he also played, everywhere he's been, the man has had success. Even when he was here prior, he's had success. So Rodney Garner coached defenses, especially that front set. I realize he doesn't have much to do with the linebackers or anything, but that defensive line, man, they eat. I mean, those guys, we heard some names last year that, we thought would be buried by depth, guys that are just exploding everybody. Right. And you look at how Tennessee's also recruited the defensive line. They have been doing amazing recruiting on the defensive line over the past few years since Josh Heupel came, Rodney Garner came. You're picking up guys, obviously Shandavion Bradley is no longer with the program. Guys like David Hobbs, Ross, James Pierce obviously is there. Josephs. I mean, we could go on and on and on talking about these defensive guys, but the defensive line play for Tennessee, I think, is very, very stout. They're going to have one of the best front groups, defensive lines in the SEC, in my opinion. Everything behind him, that's a different story. I do think the linebackers are going to excel a little bit this year. They kind of feed off of that defensive line a little bit, which it's kind of easy to do when they're eating the way they do. So the way I would describe it to someone who was really unfamiliar would be stout up front, bend but don't break in the secondary.
Perfect. I think that sums it up pretty nicely. You talked about the defensive line. We got quite a few guys returning for 24, but losing James Pierce was a big loss on the edge there. as everyone knows, he was recently drafted by the Falcons in the first round of the draft. Who do you think steps up into that vacated role that he left?
I think both Josephs and Ross will be phenomenal this year, especially if they play adjacent to each other, similar to just the first group off the top of my head. The first two that popped the head tandem who played adjacent to one another would be Derek Barnett and Corey Vereen. Corey Vereen doesn't get talked about enough. I don't think he gets his justice when it comes to talking about Tennessee defensive linemen throughout history. I mean, of course, that's because he did play on the same defensive line as Derek Barnett, who broke Reggie White's sack record at Tennessee, but the reason he was able to get there, Barnett, was partly due to the fact that Vereen's rush was as equally impressive to me, especially on the eye test. So I think that right there is going to explode. And if you look at some PFF grades from last season, Joseph's actually graded out higher than Pierce for the entirety of the season, which is an absolutely incredible thought considering the fact that Pierce had such a tenacious motor. But it was often due to the fact that he was double teamed and so on.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Sticking with the defensive line, and we talked about, you're talking about Rodney Garner and that heavy depth that they had at the position. So with defensive tackles, Omar Norman Lott and Omari Thomas off to the NFL, what are your expectations for the interior defensive line for this season?
I expect them to be body eaters. And by that, I mean somebody that's going to consume 1-2 offensive linemen to allow, because Tennessee's strength on the defensive line is clearly on the edge. Coming off the edge, whether it's a linebacker, a stand-up linebacker, whomever it may be coming off the edge, that's Tennessee's strength. So a lot of teams, especially in the past, I would say 9 years or so, have just had crazy success, namely on third down against Tennessee up the gut. So what I'm looking for this season is there's going to be a lot of plug and play. I think they're going to be subbing quite a bit there. I think they've got enough depth on the defensive line now so they can kind of rotate some of those guys in and out of there. So honestly, I don't have a name right off the top of my head that I'm going to say, hey, it's that guy for sure. But I do think that there are a few guys on that roster that can step up and provide huge minutes on the interior of that defensive line. As long as they're able to take up a body and stop the run, I think it'll be A-okay. And I'm not worried again. Anytime there's a defensive line coached by Rodney Garner, that's the least concerning position group on the entire field to me is the defensive line.
Right. I got to thank Jackson Moy, Tyree West, Davian Hobbs. I got to think all three of them are going to be heavy into the rotation. You were talking about Joseph, but I think he's going to be more of your edge guy, right? So they've got some younger guys, but I just don't know how much of a role that they're going to play with Tyree Weathersby and Joshua Helsden. They got some young guys coming in like Marion Dye and Ethan Utley. So Jaden Lofton is another one. So it'll be interesting to see what Gardner puts together with this group.
Jaden Lofton is a guy that I am huge on. I think it'll be next season. You'll hear me talking about him a lot over next year, but I think that dude's going to ball out. I do think Tyree West is going to be one of the primary options there on the interior, but I think he's going to be great. There's quite a few of those guys that I think are going to be fantastic there. I think Hobbs will probably move to the edge as well. I think he'll be in that rotation group that switches out between Josephs and so on. So between Josephs and Ross, whomever it may be that starts. But again, I'm just not worried at all about that defensive line, man. Rodney Garner is the Darth Vader of college football, man. His will be done.
Yeah. So I guess you've kind of already answered it. Is there a player on that defensive line in the interior or on the edge that you think is ready to take that next step this year?
It's got to be Joseph for me, man. I thought he made that last year. If he can make another jump like that, he's looking at a first-round draft grade.
Yeah, he was impressive in his improvement and progression last year. I thought he would take that step, but I didn't know it would be to that degree. So he exceeded what I was expecting from him last year. So, yeah, I would agree with you. If he can do that again this year, then it's going to make the loss of Pierce, I'm not going to say easy, but it's definitely going to lessen the blow.
I do think the ability of Ross and Josephs both to play adjacent at the same time, their abilities, I think, will circumvent a lot of that loss of Pierce. It's hard to replace somebody. It's hard to replace that type of motor. The guy was just ferocious. He would never stop, So that's what's going to be hard to replace. But I've seen a lot of that out of Joseph's already. cannot wait to see more out of Ross and Hobbs and guys like that I haven't seen a whole lot out of yet. But as long as they've got that tenacity and that motor and that drive to just keep going and going, the sky's the limit for that bunch.
Yeah, not to get off of track here, but a lot of people were asking me, because I do a lot of the fantasy stuff, and they're asking me about James Pierce, and they're like, well, man, he had a down year. He only had 7.5 sacks. And I'm like, dude, do you not realize the first 2, 3, 4 games of the season, he only played a quarter, maybe a quarter and a half at best? Yeah. I mean, come on. I mean, he could have had easily 15 sacks if we'd have let him play the whole games against the Kent States and stuff like that. It just goes to show you numbers don't always tell the story. So,
they were about having to call in artillery to stop him from getting into the backfield. They were double, triple times. I mean, I saw him getting doubled, break through a double just to be met by a back in the backfield waiting. So, I mean, it's hard to get through 3 guys, even James Pierce.
Yes, especially when they are focusing on you to begin with. So, yeah, definitely are. Let's go to the second level at linebacker. You kind of touched on it a minute ago. The top 2 linebackers returned from 2024 with Arian Carter, and Jeremiah Thielander. What are your expectations for the linebacking group heading into this year? And how big of an opportunity, if I can talk, do you see this being for Edwin Spillman or even one of the incoming freshmen, Harmon, Gass, Perlow?
So Edwin Spillman, I can tell you this from having watched him play in person, that kid is a headhunter. And when he plays a hit, he's been there, if you can remember.
Yes.
But I'll tell you, the guy that I'm watching the most, and I'm very impressed with Thielander, he's done a great job. I think he's more of a just a natural born leader. He's kind of built for that role. His ability to get in shape. When he first arrived at Tennessee, I thought to myself, well, this kid looks a little clunky. You know what I mean? But looking at him now, it looks like he can rip an oak tree up by the root outside. So, he's done a great job getting in shape. But Arian Carter, man, I'm telling you, that kid, he's got some potential to be a really, really, really good, really potential household name type of linebacker, man. From what I saw to him last season, again, he's one of those guys that if he makes a little bit more of a jump, he's going to be very impressive. He's going to have some impressive film. So that's the guy I'm watching the most. But with these linebackers, my expectations for them are to just take care of business, do their job. We don't need anything fancy, just routine and playmaking. That's all we need. But I do think there will be a sprinkle or two. We saw Arian Carter in the Florida game last year. As soon as DJ Lagway come in, boom, picked it off and took it. So some stuff like that may be sprinkled in, but I think just on the whole, I believe it'll be more routine and just fundamental play style from the secondary, from the linebackers.
Right. So it sounds like Carter, Thielander, and Spillman, if you agree, they're going to be the main 3. And they're going to be needed a lot, right? Because they're young. They're going in, Carter and Thielander will be juniors, and Spillman's going to be a sophomore. So they're kind of inexperienced a little bit. They're kind of young, but they are, like you said, man, they're all they're just dudes. With that said, you got to have some depth behind them at some point. And being so thin there, I mentioned Gass, Perlow, and Harmon. Do you see one of those 3 kind of stepping up as that 4th guy, or do you think it's going to be a mix?
I think each of them will have an opportunity, but if I had to just, pick one, I'd probably go with Harmon. I really like his skill set. I like his body style as well. I feel like he's a little lanky for a linebacker, which for me is a dream because I'm a big fan of a coverage linebacker myself. I love a hybrid run stop coverage linebacker, but that kid just looks like he could go up and high point a ball. If they were to go with let's say just a route underneath or something, and he's waiting in coverage, they try to dump it over the top. He looks like somebody that could go up and just pick one off. I really like his play style. He's got really good instincts. I like his speed, which I'm again big on at linebacker. So I think Harmon, for me, out of that young group, that new group, I think he would be the one to step up. But the one that I'm watching that's not being talked about enough is Spillman. I think that kid is going to be a stud.
Yeah, I do too. Everything that I saw from him just screams star, right? Superstar. And I think Tennessee's going to need that, right? Even with Arian Carter, even with T-Lander, having Spielman step into that third spot and be that potential star, I think is only going to help them. We were talking about Carter a little bit. He's just a ball player, just a dude. He was a big-time recruit for the Vols and has played solid so far. Last year he had 68 tackles, 29 of them were solo. I'd like to see more solo stops out of him. But he had 7 TFLs and an interception and 6 pass deflections. So he's a little bit better in coverage than I expected with the pass deflections, the interception. But do you think he's ready for the big jump in 2025? Because Keenan Peely, I know we didn't have Peely a lot last year because of the injuries, but we had some other guys that was kind of a mix and mash unit. Now that the cycles, they've kind of cycled out, it's kind of his team, right? Him and T-Lander, it's kind of their go. So do you think Carter's ready for that big jump this year?
I do, and I think we're going to see a growth in maturity as well. I think we're going to see him take more of a leadership role on the field. I expect him to be, getting guys organized pre-snap. Him and T-Lander both. I mean, having one on defense is fantastic, but imagine having 2 that now know the defense, that now have played a little bit. But, a lot is to be said about that jump between year 1 to year 2, whether it's starting for a year or, having played a little bit and then starting the next year. But there's a lot to be said about that jump, whether it's, a player, even a coach, So I do expect a lot out of Carter this year, and he's fantastic in coverage. That's kind of why I said Harmon as well, because he's kind of a very style linebacker, maybe not as big, maybe not as strong, but as good in coverage. Have 2 of those guys back there, man, that's a nightmare. You don't have nothing open underneath. You don't have nothing open deep. Let's pray that the secondary can hold out. And then you got that bully line coming at you. So, I mean, there are a lot of options for this Tennessee linebacker group, a lot of things you could do with them. They're a very versatile bunch, which I think makes them enigmatic to a sense, but lethal in another sense. So we'll just see how it all plays. They develop the way they're supposed to. It could be a good bunch, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we've touched on the defensive line. We've hit on the linebackers. So you just mentioned it. If that secondary can hold up, we look pretty stout, right? With the returning starters, even with Will Brooks being gone, he's probably our biggest loss from the group last year. Just what an impact player. If it wasn't for him, we would have been in trouble in a couple of games. Just huge moments from him. Overall, for the secondary group, what are your expectations for this room in 2025?
So every year it seems like that I'm harping on this exact same thing. I feel like a politician running on one thing and just talking about nothing else. I'm going to lower gas prices. For me, the secondary is always the big question mark. Now, I don't think I'm breaking news here by say defensive back is the hardest position to play at any level of football. And I'm not just saying that because I played defensive back. I was terrible, but it takes a really, really, really to be exceptional at defensive back. So that being said, Tennessee's dealing with injury right now to Jermod McCoy, who's really, in my opinion, their biggest guy. And Will Brooks was fantastic last year. I love his story. He played above and beyond. Hopefully he finds a landing spot in the league. I really hope so for that guy. I love him to death. But there's some guys coming in. Colton Hood from Colorado, I think, was a massive acquisition. You guys might remember Bryce Thompson, who played for Tennessee. In my opinion, that's who he reminds me of. I think he's a little bit more athletic, just as fast, very really, really good in-air, on-ball instinct, meaning he can D his guy up. I don't think we're going to see him getting beat deep much. It'll take somebody like an Ohio State, I'm not even going to say his name, an Ohio State receiver to go out there and maybe a Ryan Williams at Alabama, an exceptional type receiver, because you got to remember these guys are going up against the Mike Matthews, the Bray Staley's, guys that can play ball. Right. So I think this dude is going to be a great acquisition for Tennessee. I think the biggest loss for Tennessee this last season was Jordan Thomas going to Vanderbilt. I think that was a huge blow. I know Jacoby Thomas recently left for Miami as well, which would have been great for depth, would have been great for experience. You hate to see that, but I think Jordan Thomas was going to be absolutely phenomenal. Then we can talk about Boo. I mean, that guy, give me 20 of him, and I'll go win you 3-4 national championships in a row. That dude can do it all. He's the Travis Hunter of the South. So We gotta give him an opportunity to do something defensively as well. He's getting another guy with great instincts, really good speed, really good in-air on-ball instincts. So you've got some guys that can play some man coverage this year, which makes Tennessee a little bit better. As long as they bend but don't break in that secondary, can hold their man coverage, can give that defensive line time to do its job. I'm not saying they could be as good as last year, but I don't think it'll be as big of a drop-off as what people are expecting.
That's what I love to hear. You're talking about Will Brooks being gone. Andre Turrentine returned. Um, in addition to losing Will Brooks, that group lost 3 of their top 4 starters. Who do you think is ready to take the next step in 25 at the safety group, at their safety spot?
Honestly, man, that's one that I wish you hadn't asked me because I have no answer for you. Kobe Thomas is who I would have said right off the bat.
Yeah.
I was sure as anything that he was locked in. But you know how the current standard of college football, you know how it is. But right now, that is probably we were talking about the defensive line being the least concerning group to me. The safety group is the most concerning. Can we please just go get Eric Berry back? Like I would be so
for real.
But it seems like Tennessee struggled at safety since I don't know Brian Randolph. I mean it's been a while since they've had a really really good safety. I wish Key Lawrence would have stayed here. He ended up going to Oklahoma. I had high hopes for that guy, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with the safeties. I really don't have an answer right now in that regard, but that's what I'm going to be watching intently.
Yeah, that group's kind of really thin. They got a lot of options, but they're just so thin and inexperienced. So I think Turrentine, it's going to be a big expected jump for him this year.
He'll be your
now. Who steps into
probably at the free safety, likely.
Yeah. So who steps in beside him will be huge. So you touched on Boo Carter a minute ago. It's no secret that he wanted to play both sides of the ball, and he's talented enough to do so. With Tennessee's lack of depth in the secondary, they really need him to step up as a defender and be a big piece for them. With that in mind, is that really going to limit his usage on offense? Or do you think they're going to say, okay, you're good enough, you can do both, and let's ride with it?
So I think a part of, Boo was flirting with leaving and everything else. I think a part of him coming back was an agreement between him and the coaches that he would get opportunities on both sides of the ball. I think that if that does become an issue, personally for me, I really wish he would just play defensive back because, as we stated, that's the hardest position in college football to play, in football period to play. So that's enough in and of itself to focus on, let alone having to worry about which route you're going to run. I'll say, as a receiver, the dude's going to be electric. If he gets to play, get the ball in his hands, let him do. Just let him do. That's what he does.
Right.
But I don't think it's going to limit him at first. But if it does become an issue, I expect Heupel to quickly, pull the cord on that one and say, hey man, listen, it's your safety coming down to it. We want you to go to the league. You're getting worn down. You're getting hurt. We need the depth. We need you. So if it does become an issue, yes, I think they'll nullify it. But I don't think it's going to be an issue, man. I think that kid's a stud. Travis Hunter, I think they're very, very similar type players.
Do you think he's going to play? Do you think he's going to play as many snaps on offense as like Hunter, or do you think it's going to be, a couple snaps a game on offense?
So I think Tennessee is in a better shape in wide receivers than what Colorado was. I think they kind of had to play Travis Hunter wide receiver. Can you guys name me any other Colorado wide receivers off the top of your head?
LaJohntay Wester.
Okay, you got one there. In there. But this guy's on it. But I think especially this year with Tennessee's wide receiver group coming up, Mike Matthews, Bray Staley, who I'm super excited for. Listen, y'all, listen. Radarius, do not forget about him. He's not been talked about near enough. He is going to go off this year. You got Travis Smith coming up. I mean, the wide receiver, I am not worried about them at all. So I don't think they're going to need Boo the way that Colorado needed Hunter. But I expect them to sprinkle him in there, maybe some little bubble screens or something to let him utilize his athleticism in the open field.
Do you think offense and defense for him is going to limit his special teams because he's, like you said, he's an electrifying player. I kind of feel like it will, but I think in the big moments where they need a huge return, he's going to be back there as a punt returner. Now, if it's a blowout or something like that, they're giving somebody else opportunity. But I think if it's a clutch moment where they need a big return, I think he still gets those opportunities. But overall, I think his special teams kind of takes a hit, right?
Yeah, I don't think we see him on special teams at all. I don't think it's going to be any situation where he's returning any punt, anytime period. I think right now Tennessee has something they haven't had in a long time, especially at returner, wide receiver. They've got depth. They've got talent. Those guys are quicker than greased cheetahs. Half of them are 6'3".
Yeah.
I mean, they've got 80-inch vertical. I'm telling you, Tennessee has right now built a wide receiver room of prototypical wide receivers, meaning, your 6'4" guys that run like a 4.2 40. I mean, dudes that fly down the field that are huge, that can jump, massive hands. That's what they're building. And when Faison Brandon comes in, everyone's well aware of that wide receiver group. But I digress. I think they're just too blessed right now, a wide receiver, to use Boo Carter in that situation.
Yeah, I know we're a defensive pod, but you mentioned Rodarius Jackson, and he's going to be absolutely ridiculous. If you don't know who he is, you better be finding out real quick because that dude can ball. Corners. We talked about Jermod McCoy working his way back from the ACL tear. Do the Vols have enough to hold the fort down with Ricky Gibson Jr., who flirted with the portal, and incoming transfer Colton Hood? With those two, I feel like they're good enough that they can help ease McCoy back till he gets fully healthy. And I think once he's back, those three are that's a trio right there, along with Boo. I think if you can get McCoy back fully healthy without any setbacks, I think your cornerback room just become a strength.
Yeah, absolutely. I think McCoy does, obviously he bolsters that room. He had a great last season all year long and routinely guarded the best receivers on the field. I know if anyone from Buckeye Nation happens to hear this, listen, we know, okay? We know, all right? We know. He's good, all right? He's good. We all agree he's good, all right? All right, let's drop it. But everybody he did a good job on. He did an exceptional job all year in every game but one. And that's not, that's just a phenomenal wide receiver. But I do think that Tennessee, with the addition of Colton Hood, that's why I was talking about the importance of that a little bit. Tennessee is, I don't want to say razor thin at back. We've got some guys that we haven't seen yet. They're there. Tennessee does have some defensive backs, guys that were 4 stars, high rated 3 stars, guys that can play. They're still kind of waiting in the wings. So there is a little bit of depth there, but when it comes to quality of depth, experience depth, they're very, very limited. So I think the addition of Colton Hood is going to be huge. I think, some of these guys that you were talking about also, I think their play is going to be very important, especially early on until McCoy can face his way back into the defense. But I'm going to be watching Boo for sure, man.
Yeah, I thought getting Colton Hood, like you said earlier in the show, I thought that was probably as huge as a incoming get in the transfer portal as any. I mean, because we really needed that. We needed him to come in and strengthen that position.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee lost, like I was talking about Jordan Thomas, and then you lose Jacoby Thomas to Miami as well. You've got guys graduating, so on and so forth. So really, it seems like every year I'm just harping on the secondary and Willie Martinez. But, again, I think they'll be bend but don't break. And if some of those guys can take a jump, much like the rest of the team, but if those guys specifically in the secondary can make even a little bit of a jump, Tennessee's good enough in the front 7 to where they could be a ridiculously fast, ridiculously forceful defense.
Awesome. If you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout season in 25, who would it be? Defensive lineman, linebacker, secondary, the one that you think's just going to, we didn't see this coming, and here he is.
I think some of us see it coming, but I got to go with Arian Carter on this one. I think Arian Carter is going to be a household name by the end of the season. I think a lot of us are expecting him to have a good year, but I think some of us are kind of I think we're under reading it a little bit, and I think he's going to go off this year. I mean, I think he's going to have a few highlight plays that circulate on TikTok and all those little social media sites. But, I mean, I really do think he's going to do wonders for his draft grade this season.
Yeah, him being a junior, there's a lot of expectations for him, like we were kind of talking about. But I'm with you. I think he's going to be the one that kind of steps up. And I would agree with you on Joseph, too, stepping in for Pierce. I think those two are your two biggest next step up guys. Do you think any of the freshmen will make an impact on the defense for 2025?
So I think some of the freshmen, some of the young guys that might play, maybe sprinkling Harmon defense and linebacker, maybe. But I think if you have any young guys that are going to be successful right away, I think it'll be on the defensive line for two reasons. I think it's just a little bit easier for those guys to let's say I was an electrician. If I worked alongside the best electricians in the world, I'm probably going to end up being a pretty good electrician when it's all said and done. So if I'm one of these young interior defensive linemen, and I've got Joseph's over here, I've got Ross, Hobbs over here, whomever it may be, watching them eat, that's going to teach me what I need to do. So I think, and on that same hand, if Rodney Garner's putting you out there as a freshman, you're a dog. Like, you are a dog.
Yeah.
So if those young guys are getting in on that defensive line, that tells me that, hey, Rodney Garner trusts you, so I trust you. Here's my car keys. Here's my home deed, anything you want. Just quarterback. So I think any sort of young player that steps on that defensive line this season is going to show out.
Right. So we're in the 25 season. Well, we'll be in the 25 season coming up here. Give me one recruit for the 220. If I could talk for the 2026 cycle, give me one recruit that you expect us to get that nobody's really talking
about. Oh man, the 26 cycle. Give me Tristan Keys, wide receiver. He's already, I believe, he's an LSU commit right now. If I'm not mistaken, did he land at LSU or did he back out? Either way, I don't keep up with.
I think he's still committed. I think.
So here's the thing: Faison Brandon and him are fairly close from what I can ascertain. And Faison Brandon's locked in with Tennessee. We got was it Tyreek King from Catholic, who is that kid. I don't know that they'll be able to photograph him. I think he's too fast. But guys like that. And Faison Brandon is recruiting Tristan Keys hard. I mean, hard, dude. So I think Tennessee could play a little bit of flipperooski there and pull him over to the good guys.
Oh, that'd be huge. With the room that we've already got, that would be insane. So I gotta ask. I haven't really talked to you since the first of the year, so I've got to get some of these thoughts out of my head. We know about the whole Nico situation. Everybody knows about the whole Nico situation. I don't know exactly who he was talking to or where he was getting his information from. But woof, what a decision. And not just because it's us, right? I mean, it could have been for any other school. I just think to turn down what he turned down for what he got at his new home, and you got to pay more taxes. And I don't know that team's anywhere close to the talent that we are. Oof, I mean, that's just not a good look. And I don't, like I said, I don't know where he was getting his information. Can you explain it? Because I can't. When people ask me, I can't complain.
So this all comes down to his father, in my opinion, Big Nick. I think what they did was overplayed their hand a bit. I think they thought they had more leverage to the situation than what they did. And kudos to Josh Heupel, man, and Tennessee for not backing down, not kowtowing down.
Absolutely.
Nico was unprecedented. He was the first big NIL deal. We knew eventually something was going to blow up in that regard. There's a different breed of athlete these days. Back when we were all growing up watching ball, it was guys wanted to play there because they loved that school. They grew up as a fan of that school. They grew up, their dad played there, whatever it may be. And they were loyal. And I still think Nico Iamaleava is going to be a Heisman caliber quarterback. I still think everything that I thought about him while he was at Tennessee. Yeah, he had a freshman year last year. I don't, people hating on his last season. Was he great? No. Was he awful? No. He went to the playoff. What do you mean? I mean, yeah, it was partly due to Dylan's defense, but went to the playoff. He did what he was supposed to do in his first year as a starter. But I do hate the way he left, but on the same hand, I still believe he might be what turns that UCLA program back around. He might be what revitalizes that program. They were decent at one time. I still think he's going to be a Heisman caliber quarterback. I think he'll be able to pull some talent in with him. I mean, South California is it's very easy to want to live there, unless you're political in a way like mine would. I think he'll be okay at UCLA. I think he'll be pretty good by the time he's upperclassman that's been there a little while. But you hate the situation, but I can't hate Nico. He was good while he was here, man. He was good to all the fans, and he was just a good kid. But I think he's going to be great. But see ya. You know what I mean? We'll see you later, man. Let's drop it. Let it go. Got Jake Merklinger, George McIntyre, now Joey Aguilar, who I won a national championship with on NCAA 25 this past year. So maybe it's an omen, but I think Tennessee will be okay. I think with the weapons they have at running back and wide receiver, you don't have to be a Peyton Manning, and Josh Heupel has shown us that he doesn't need a Lamborghini to win the drag race. Give him the keys to a 98 Civic DX. The dude's going to win the race. So I trust Heupel. I trust his quarterback room, and I'm excited to see what happens, man.
Yeah, and to quote Moneyball, you were talking about Josh Heupel and Danny White. Kudos to them. Yeah, the first warrior through the wall always gets bloodied, right? And you may not get any of the other coaches or athletic directors around the country to admit it, but they couldn't have been more happy of what those two did and just standing up for themselves and their team, right? Standing their ground. That went a long way, whether the rest of them would admit it or not. Piggybacking off this, I was watching the War Report. Yeah, I know it's an Auburn podcast, and they were interviewing Hugh Freeze, and I don't necessarily agree with everything that he says. And my dog, hang on, let me shut the door.
I got
yeah, he's Mama's home, so he's all excited. But he made the comment. They were talking about the transfer portal. And he had the idea of doing away with the two portals, going back to one, and having that one portal moved to like after the 4th of July, somewhere in July. Then, after you have your portal, you have a 10-day window between that portal and the start of the season. A la training camp in the NFL. I have 10 practices where you can get ready. Now, I was kind of reading it a couple of different ways. He was saying, well, in January, after all the bowl games and the playoffs are done, you've got players having surgeries and they're missing spring ball. I mean, you've got this portal and your players are transferring here and you got players coming in. Why not do away with all the spring games, all the portal stuff early? Start at the beginning of the season, back up and give a 10-day window for practices, and then back up before that and have you a portal there. That way they've got all, from the first of the year all the way through spring and summer for your players to get healthy. You know what players are on your roster. There's no more transfer portals for them to hit. It kind of made sense, but I was also thinking, you speaking as a head coach about players transferring in and out, if you do away with all this spring stuff, all these other coaches, they don't get to watch your spring games or your practices and see he looks pretty good. Maybe we can get him to come in the portal, which is smart, right? But like I said, I don't agree with what Free says all the time, but I thought that was a really good idea, doing away with the two portals, going back to one, making it later in the year, and having the whole spring for your players to get healthy and you get your roster right. Thoughts?
So for me, man, I don't really think there's a one-size-fits-all solution to this whole portal NIL mess.
Right.
I think it's important to remember that it's all still relatively new. And just like anything else, think of the first years of the United States. They were far from perfect, but now we live in the greatest country on earth. So give it a little bit of time. Give these legislators, give these administrators a little bit of time. I can tell you, listen, as somebody that literally works in college athletics, it is a big deal. Compliance, the NCAA dealing with all a huge deal. So they take it very, very seriously, and they have the same concerns that we all have. So I can assure you that they are working towards solutions, but it's going to be a very liquid situation until we figure out the right one, right? Something that works for, one size fits all. So, I don't really have the answer myself. I'm about as smart as a box of rocks, so I don't proclaim to know everything, but I do know that something needs to be done. The way it is right now is not great. And boys, I hate to cut you short. I got 3 youngins hollering at me over here, so I'm about to have to wrap up, Williams, in just a moment.
All right, no problem. Actually, we're about to wind up. If you want to, you got the All Vol Colleen show. You're doing stuff for LMU. We'll send you out on this question. What got you interested in the Vols, and how you came to start the All Vols Colleen show?
So what got me interested in Tennessee is I came out of the room singing Rocky Top. I was born a Tennessee Vol. But what got me into it was I remember in 2017, Tennessee had played Florida. I believe it was at Florida, if I'm not mistaken. We were up. We were about to win in the swamp. Then Felipe Franks throws a bomb to Tyree Cleveland, and Florida wins the game. I've always been a huge college sports nerd, statistician nerd. Always been pretty good at writing. But I just went ranting on Facebook. I just popped a Facebook Live open ranting. Before I knew it, there were 4,500 people watching me. And I didn't panic. People were just asking me questions, and I was giving answers of what I thought. And people were saying, "Hey, who do you work for? What sports company do you work for?" I was like, "Dude, I drive a forklift. I haven't been out of the Marines long. I'm a forklift for a medical warehouse." And they were like, "You should look into it." So I started out in newspaper, and then I started the show up first. Is what happened, and just got the idea. Literally, just got the idea after that game happened, and I talked to some people online and came up with a name on the spot and started broadcasting. It just kind of exploded. We started getting some guests on and whatnot, and it just kind of grew. And then started writing for newspapers and then magazines, and then started doing some radio. Worked for Fox Sports Knoxville there for a couple of years, and then found my way to Lincoln Memorial University as well. So it's all just, dude, it's been a blur. The last 8 years have been kids and buying houses, trying to buy a house and just like trying to live and work, man. It's all a blur, but I am truly a blessed man. I just I'll say this for anybody that has ever wanted to do it for a living: take a chance on yourself. Don't ever sell yourself short. Don't ever be afraid to take a risk, because one day you're gonna be a withered up old man or old lady, and you're gonna be sitting around like, man, I wish I'd have jumped off that bridge into the water that day at the lake, or I wish I would have crowd surfed at that concert. Take a chance on yourself. I promise you'll never regret it, because even if you fall on your face, you took a chance, man. You took a chance.
Well, John, you do great work, man. I love all your work. Hopefully, I'll be able to write some stuff for you this fall for the Vols. Go check him out at the All Vols Call-In. You can follow him on X at JXNDUNN, John Dunn. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, man. I know you got to run, but you're welcome back anytime to talk Tennessee. Just let us know. We'll get you on. Appreciate you joining us tonight, man.
Hey, it's my pleasure, boys. It's nice talking with you guys anytime. And you best believe you're going to be writing some stuff for me. So you better be ready for it, too. We're coming hard this year.
Hey, I'm ready. So, follow us on Twitter at Devy IDP Grind. You can follow him at Justice_2318 and me at Hollywood Titan. And we will see you all next week. Shoot, yeah, that went pretty well, man.